Hello, everyone. It's Laurie and Jennie once again. Just to introduce us, I am Laurie of Astrolore at astrolore.org, and Jennie is Jennie of Hidden Path Astrology at hiddenpathastrology.com. Together, we're coming together as Astropath. And what I want to let you know is that we are going to be collaborating on what is currently and has been my Astrolore Patreon page is going to become Astropath Patreon page. And we're working behind the scenes to upgrade that. It's going to be of great value to those of you who are interested in this stuff and want more information. We're working to upgrade that. If you have ideas of what you'd like us to offer there, let us know. And what we're here to talk about today is about the Aquarius season, the upcoming Aquarius season, and the Aquarius New Moon, which happens right as Aquarius season starts. So that's what we're here to talk about. Before moving forward, please subscribe to our channel, like us, make comments, ask questions, all of those good things.
Yes, do please.
Yes, do please.
Yes. All right. Well, Aquarius season starts on January 20th, at least in the part of the world that the two of us live in. It's at 3:29 a.m. on January 20th. That's Eastern time. And right after that, just as Laurie mentioned, the very next day we have the new moon. So we'll talk about all those things together. But I think we should start by talking about Aquarius itself.
Yes.
What do you think of, Laurie, when you think of Aquarius?
Aquarius is a lovely sign. I love Aquarius. Aquarius is the fixed air sign. It is ruled in modern astrology, it's ruled by Uranus. In traditional astrology, it is ruled by Saturn. And that little detail has been a challenging one for me personally to wrap my head around. Having grown up working with modern astrology, I always thought of Aquarius as being ruled by Uranus, all this unusual innovation and, wild, unexpected energy, which is true. Uranus is the co-ruler. But if you, really wrapping my head around Saturn as the traditional ruler has been challenging. And yet at the same time, if people with really strong Aquarius statements in their chart, you really can feel that Saturn core of serious determination in Aquarius as well. But really, I would think, Aquarius is the sign of innovation. It is moving us into the future. It is not concerned with the past. It is concerned with opening up new floodgates of information and information. It's an air sign. So, yeah. How about you?
Well, I like that you brought up the rulership issue because it is kind of funny because Uranus is certainly associated with breakthroughs and sudden change and electricity and all these things that you do kind of associate to some degree with Aquarius. But I agree with you. Like the Saturn, once you take on board Saturn rulership and start to work with it, it's quite fascinating. It really does relate, I think, to the fixed part of Aquarius to start with. Like that Aquarius is, it's probably the most possibly one of the most movable because it's an air sign of the four fixed signs. But it kind of wants to stay in one place in a funny way. And the way I kind of work with that is I think of Aquarius as being way up high up in the stratosphere, kind of looking down on everything and getting this like perspective that can see into the distance and see into the future and kind of get that bird's eye view. But it's still dealing with the reality of what's on the ground. And then it's just trying to think about how can we tweak, innovative, invent to bring something forwards into the future. And if you think about Saturn as the planet of responsibility, I think of Capricorn as being the kind of the inside of that responsibility. So inside the wall, whereas Aquarius is everything outside.
Oh, I love how you said that, Jennie. That's great.
So But yeah, I mean, Aquarius is such a forward-thinking sign. I mean, it is an air sign, so it is associated with mental processes, being intellectual. You can kind of think of like the mad scientist or the mad inventor with the wild hair and a million pairs of glasses, like working on something. It's also, it can be very eccentric. But it's also the rebel and the revolutionary and the like, hey, you know what? The old way, it's not working. We need to try something new. So there's something about that.
Yeah, and one of the great things about Aquarius, and of course, I say it's a great thing. In some cases, it can go overboard, but the ability of Aquarius to detach might sound negative, but it's not an emotional sign. Aquarius is able to really be very systematic in moving forward. It's not going to be held back by emotion. I always think of some young person growing up in some super conservative environment, and they realize that there's something about them that does not fit in with their family. You really hope for their sake that they've got a strong Aquarius piece, that they can remove themselves from emotion enough to move forward for the higher growth of their own lives. That detachment from emotion, which can be so important. I mean, we can't let emotion hold us in a position that doesn't work for us. And Aquarius really allows us to remove ourselves from that emotional morass and just do what needs to be done.
Yeah. I really like you said that, because I think one of the things I like to think about with Aquarius is that it does associate with the idea of non-attachment.
Yeah.
And non-attachment really is, it's not going so far as to be completely detached, but it allows you to look at things with a kind of a witness viewpoint so that you can step outside of yourself and watch what you're doing, and detach from emotions that you might not be able to rise above in that moment. And it's not that emotions are bad. It's just that you do have to work through your emotions, but you also have to be able to step back and get that clear-eyed view and sort of weigh things and look at them with this, as I said, this clear-eyed view, so that you know what the path forwards is. And so it's kind of like, you have to work with them in tandem to some degree.
Yeah. And I guess detachment can sound negative. So it's really about objectivity.
Yeah.
It's about really having an objective view and moving forward with what is necessary.
Yeah.
Rather than being pulled back. Aquarius it's the sign of the future. So there we've got it.
All right. Well, do you want to talk about the new moon?
Let's talk about the new moon. Let's start with that.
I'm going to pop that chart up here.
Okay.
This will help, this will bring up a few more issues to do with Aquarius if we've missed anything. So, well, here you go. So we see the sun and the moon right there together. This is the Eastern chart. So the United States, the East Coast. So it's in the 8th house here, but that might be in a completely different place depending on where you are. Anyway, so the new moon, time to plant a seed, right?
Yes. So the seed that we're planting is a seed of innovation. It's really as simple as that. You want to wait until after the moment of the new moon before you plant your seed. I think that's really important. You don't want to, the new moon is on a Saturday at 3:53 p.m. You don't want to plant the seed or do your ritual at noontime. You want to wait until after. You can even do it the next day. But this is a time to really consider, finding out what house that new moon is happening in your own chart, and do some sort of a ritual to plant a seed for the growth of that new moon.
Yeah. And I mean, this new moon is interesting because, first of all, it's coming on the coattails of a period of time in which you've had a chance to think about what you want to recommit to. So like the season before was really associated with taking responsibility and kind of claiming new growth and that sort of thing. And then now at this Aquarius moon, you're thinking, okay, so now how do I need to kind of add some innovation? How do I need to tweak this thing, this idea, this project, whatever it is, and make it something that's suitable for the future, that addresses the needs and concerns of what's happening, because the culture is changing all the time. Yeah. So,
and I think the other thing to bring in that we didn't talk about with Aquarius is that it is involved with the whole community. So the innovation isn't all in your own head by yourself. It's like innovating with others for the benefit of all. I think that's an important piece to think about.
Yeah, I totally agree, because Aquarius is the sign of alliances. It's, who do you find, how do you assemble a team? How do you assemble a group to get things done? Because you're right, it's an outward sign. It's a yang sign. It is not an inward sign. It is hey, how do I go out, talk to people, build alliances, get people on board? And this is what you're looking at, is you've gone from a more internal phase of identifying whatever your big thing is, your project, and now you've got to include others and let them help you with the task ahead of you. And I think that's even more emphasized because in this chart, at this new moon, you can see that Venus is also right next to Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius. So this just kind of adds to the idea that, it's about your relationships. You've got to include your relationships in your dialogue with your relationships in order to fully take responsibility. And you've got to include these other folks.
Yeah. And one of the big things that this visual really shows us is all those planets in Aquarius. So the area of your chart that holds Aquarius is really lit up, and there's work to be done, work involving your relationships, work involving your own emotional nature, work involving that area of your life.
Yeah.
And starting a new cycle there.
Yeah, that's right. Other things that are interesting to this new moon chart is that there is a sextile with Jupiter in here. That just kind of, I don't know, I feel like that just adds more detail to whatever that project is that you started earlier this year. Because Jupiter is showing you a place, something big that is moving forwards at rapid speed now. So it's tied in with the sextile. There's this opportunity to really tweak, do something new to that project that you're working on. So that's really helpful. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I want to, think about the coming full moon, which happens on February 5th. So that's like the illumination, whatever seed you plant now, we will come to the first quarter square on January 28th. And that will be a time of really taking action to move whatever it is, the seed you're planting now, you're going to be really taking action on the 28th. And an interesting thing that I hadn't noticed until this moment is that first quarter moon, we talked about it when we were talking beforehand. We talked about it as an action point. Well, no kidding. That first quarter moon is happening right on the North Node. I didn't realize that. So it is really an action point. Plant your seed now on the 28th. You're going to want to really take action in some way on the innovative seed you plant now. At the full moon on February 5th, you're going to see some illumination of that. And that full moon will be happening in the second house. Depends on where it is in your chart. I'm looking at this as though it's a natal chart, but that will be happening in Leo, the full moon. So it's a real time of celebration.
Yeah, and back to that first quarter real quick, it because it's in Taurus, it's going to be tied in with those relationships. This is the bringing in of the other, and it's going to very much reflect, how much have you been able to think about building the sort of social element of whatever you're doing, and it's going to really show up at that first quarter. And then you're right, at the full moon, this celebratory Leo aspect is a factor. So and
then in 6 months we'll come to the Aquarius full moon, and we'll see a fuller engaged illumination of what's planted now. Do you happen to have a date for that?
I don't have it right in front of me. I'm pretty sure I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, here it is. August 1st.
August 1st. Okay,
August 1st. And it's going to be at 9 degrees
of
which
Leo.
is interesting.
Huh. Interesting.
Just because of that 9 degree where the North Node is right now. So anyway,
Yeah.
it's an astrology nerd moment.
Yeah.
All right.
We have lots of those.
Should we move on to the sort of the summary of the season? And
Yeah,
I will take down
let's
the
do
start.
that.
Okay.
And let's try looking at it week to week. Just see how that works for us. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open a little document that I obsessively prepare every month. And that looks like this. So what this is just a listing of every single thing that happens throughout the course of the month. And what I want to start out thinking about is, okay, the season starts on a Friday. The 20th is a Friday. So we're going to start by just looking at, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. We're going to start just looking at the weekend. What is happening through the course of that first weekend? And that would be through here. So that's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, and this is a pretty clear statement of Aquarius, Aquarius, Aquarius. I mean, you have Sun moves into Aquarius, you have the new moon the very next day, and then you have the actual conjunction of Venus, Saturn that we briefly mentioned at the new moon, which is really kind of, you know, starting a new cycle about whatever those connections are. It's kind of marrying the personal connections with the bigger community connections that Venus conjunct.
So yeah, pay attention to that. Pay attention that moment, that period on the 22nd there with Saturn conjuncting Venus conjuncting Saturn. Really think about that. Also, you can think about that as a different type of a new cycle beginning, a cycle of really stabilizing relationship, so to speak.
So it really kind of sets the tone. I mean, I think the overall thing we've talked about with this Aquarius season is there's quite a big Saturn influence because Saturn is in Aquarius. It's the ruler, but you also start out with this conjunction, which kind of brings it to the forefront. And then the next day you have that Uranus station direct, which is the final planet that's in retrograde. And so now we have a full slate of planets all moving in forward direction.
Yeah, for a couple of months. I can't remember. Mercury is the next one that goes retrograde. I think it's in April. I don't have that on top of my head.
It is on April. It is in April, like mid-April sometime.
So yeah, we've got a period of time now when all the planets are moving direct, and that is, it's a flow. It's a flow. I love these periods of time where everything's moving direct and coming off both Mars retrograde and Mercury retrograde overlapping. This is going to be a time of real relief. I have this sense of it's going to feel like spring is coming even before spring shows up, you know, just because we're moving forward. So that's the weekend. That's that first weekend. And then from there, we move into the first full week, which will bring us from January 24th through January 29th. So this is the first full week, and this encompasses that first quarter moon that we talked about. It also, on the 24th, we've got a sweet little sextile between Sun and Jupiter. It's just, you know, that's just an opportunity for expansion. And you talked about that when we were looking at the actual chart. And then on the 26th, Venus moves into Pisces. Wow. That's a nice movement forward.
That's a game changer because it means we have one less air in that. So it kind of drops things into the more emotional realm. This adds in a nice touch of, just kind of sweet, nourishing energy, I think.
Yeah. And we haven't had any water for a little while. This is the only planet that's going to be in water. And Venus loves being in Pisces. It's, it's exalted in Pisces. So that's just a wonderful statement and a wonderful sense of kind of a sigh of relief that really emotionally supports our values, our relationships, how we show and receive love. And
it brings in an element of forgiveness too. That's the thing. It makes it easier to have compassion for other people's suffering. It makes it easier to forgive the people around you for their foibles and the things that they irritate you with. It gives you a little more bandwidth to cope with all of those pieces. So that's nice.
Yeah, I think that's really nice.
And
then we go into that first quarter, which we've talked about. You know, you talked about it as being an action point earlier when we were talking about it. You talked about it being an action point, and the first quarter moon is always a bit of an action point because it's always a time that we take action on what we planted. But what else? Talk about what comes right after that.
Oh, well, then we have a couple of trines. So you kind of have this, hey, at the quarter moon, take action. And then the very next day, you just have this powerful influx of energy. I just think it brings in this like gift of just a flow. The sun trine Mars is a flow of energy, but it's air. So this is a real boost to your intellectual and social pursuits. And the very same day, you also have an Earth trine between Mercury and Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus. And so that brings in and it's going to have an effect in the tangible realm, you know, so you have this great idea. You're like, all right, I'm going to take action, and you start moving the thing forwards. And guess what? You also have the resources and the tangible means to execute whatever is appearing to you.
Right. And I feel like, you know, a trine aspect between Mercury and Uranus is also really exciting for conversations.
Yeah.
You know, important conversations can happen with that. I love that.
Like this, we've been talking a lot about inventive energy, and then it's like, and then how do you actually implement that into something tangible?
Right.
So it is exciting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. But then we go into the next full week, which starts on the 30th. There's nothing that happens until February 3rd, as you can see here. But that week will go through, that full week will go through the full moon. What do we got going on that week?
Well, this is kind of like, okay, so you had your great thing. It's all moving forward. You're doing the thing. And then you're like, and you hit this roadblock. And there's a bunch of different ways you can interpret this, but I was thinking it's kind of like you just don't quite have the resources you thought. Like, so you're, you know, the sun hitting Uranus there is kind of like hey, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy this thing to make this great meal for my community. And you get there and they're out of potatoes. And so you're like, oh, you know, and so now you're making turnip soup. But it really is this idea of going, oh, the resources I thought were available are suddenly not. And this could be a bigger topic because this is a cycle that began on May 5th when the sun first conjoined Uranus. But at any rate, it's this idea that you're all ready to go, and then there's a roadblock of something that just isn't available, or, you know, it's something tangible.
Right. And, you know, squares are funny. We kind of think they're so negative and hard, but they really push us. And in this case, especially with the sun in Aquarius and Uranus, the co-ruler of Aquarius, this is like, okay, like you're at that store and you wanted potatoes, but you get turnips instead. Your soup or whatever it is you're making may be even better. So, you know, you find a way to work with what is available. And rather than, I can't get potatoes, so I'm going to cancel the whole event, you simply innovate, and you find a way to make it work. It may be stressful. There may be some things that you're not thrilled with about it, but you do what is necessary. And I think that's always with squares. You do what's necessary without feeling sorry for yourself. Oh my God, there weren't potatoes. You just do it and move forward.
Yeah. And then you also have the next day, you have another square. There's really the only two squares of the whole season back to back. And here you have Venus squaring Mars, which is always an interesting thing. I mean, I was thinking this might be, I mean, this could present as sort of like an argument or a roadblock in your relationship, you know, and the temptation to just talk angrily about something. And forgetting to have compassion, you know, or dissolving in a puddle on the floor because you've got too much empathy and you're not being able to stand up for yourself. There's kind of this, I don't know. I just
somebody was angry at you for getting the turnips instead of the potatoes. Why didn't you go to 3 other stores until you found the potatoes? Yeah, that really does suggest a difficulty in relationship of some sort. But again, you talk it through, you work it through.
Yeah. And there's also some tension there between Venus is in Pisces here and
Yeah.
Mars is in Gemini. So you really are talking about tension between the yin and the yang, like the desire to be inward and quieter and softer, and against the idea of being outward and loud and, you know, saying your thing and not being afraid of being aggressive. There's some kind of play off or tension between those two things. And they're both valid. The thing is with squares is you always have to recognize both ends of the square and kind of work with it. It's not about doing one in favor of the other. You know, you've got to kind of work at both ends of it.
Yeah.
So that might be like, you know, that moment when you are angry at your partner, let's say, but in the same moment, you're also able to have compassion for their point of view, even though you're super irritated.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and you have to hold both. And this is part of the human condition, right?
and one of the nice things with this particular square is that they're both in mutable signs. So there is an adaptability.
Yeah, good point.
You're both able to adapt. So we're not going to worry too much about either one of those. We just work through them, and then we come to, I think it's on a Sunday there, that full moon on the 5th. And we talked about the full moon when we talked about the moon phases. So unless you've got something else to say, do you want to move on to the next week?
Yeah, let's carry on.
Okay, so the next week starts here and goes through this point where Mercury enters Aquarius. Okay, so this starts out pretty sweet here on the 6th and the 8th. We've got sextiles. Sextiles are just simple opportunities. We can ignore them or we can work with them. Working with them is always preferable because they are opportunities. So I don't know if you want to pull both of those apart.
Oh, well, I think just in brief, you know, Mercury sextile Neptune, this is an opportunity to allow higher ideals to, you know, come into your mindset. You know, like how you talk to people, like not far, you know, in your conversation is the reach for some empathy, you know, the reach for some higher understanding.
Beautiful. Awesome.
You know, and then Venus sextiling Uranus is, I don't know, kind of not getting too stuck in your ways a little bit, like letting, there's an opportunity to, I don't know, kind of keep things new and exciting in whatever conversation you're in.
Kind of accepting the innovation that is offered.
Yeah.
I always think in something like this, it's like, if a partner asks you for something, unless it's like way out of line, just say yes.
Yeah.
This is a time, Venus sextile Uranus, just say yes.
Yeah, let it open up something new.
Yeah. And then on the 10th, we've got Mercury conjunct Pluto. That's kind of a different statement here. This is the beginning of a cycle of bringing your attention to powerful dynamics, right?
Yeah. Like Mercury Pluto is definitely like suddenly able to look down into the root cause, like suddenly able to kind of dig down and understand like what the issue is at the bottom. It's about being able to excavate the buried things. So normally you might be more surface, but with Pluto conjunct Mars, like this isn't surface. This is digging down and confronting those hidden issues.
Right.
But I think it's also helpful, at least for me, to think about this in terms of Mercury's being retrograde. You know, it's only just cleared its shadow period, which I believe was 25 degrees or 24 degrees. So it's only just cleared it. So it's like whatever you recommitted to that had to do with integrity, like this is the moment of empowerment.
Wow,
like,
beautiful, Jennie.
Done it, you know? So if you've done all that work, then this is your kind of like, all right, we're going for it. We're going deep and we're going to get this done.
I love that. And then right on the heels of that, Mercury moves into Aquarius. Okay, now that we have recommitted to that, we're ready to move into this innovative space and join with the sun here in Aquarius, and Aquarius season is in full force here.
Sure is.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Okay, so moving into the final week of the month, which goes right to the end of the month, we start that with the last quarter moon. We start to release some process that began at the new moon. Some part of that is ready to be released. You've done that. Time to move forward. And then we move into 2 conjunctions on the 15th and the 16th. Venus conjuncting Neptune. That's just oh my goodness. And it's the day after Valentine's Day. So this is building. You'll be feeling this on Valentine's Day. This is a love fest, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, this is like, go ahead and go, go a little nuts on the romanticism. If you want to, like, do it. This is a really nice, I don't know, it's that rosy colored glasses and that sort of the romantic view, the idealistic view. I was thinking this is where, I know it's the day after, but you go out on the date and you do the flowers and you do all the thing and you go to the museum and look at transcendent art.
Right. Or you stay home and make transcendent art or something. You stare into each other's eyes all night long, whatever. But yeah, this is really a love fest. I think that's just such a beautiful thing. And to have it happening right there on Valentine's Day is kind of funny. Or the day after.
It's okay if it's your cat. It doesn't have to be a person.
That's right. That's right. Or it could just be yourself. It could, I say it's a love fest. It doesn't necessarily have to be 2 people in union. It can just be your own heart opening to the love of all of humanity. Actually, in Pisces, it might be more that, even if you are in a partnership and it is about, doing all the romantic stuff for the season, it's not really about that person so much as it is your own breaking your heart open to compassion and love.
Yeah.
The individual on the other side of that kind of is all of us.
Yeah, because
I'm getting a little woo-woo here.
I know, totally. But it is a transpersonal connection. It's almost like, if there's something really good in a connection you have with someone, it gives you hope for humanity because you recognize that this capacity is available, to humans. So there is a little bit of that. But
there is so much about compassion here.
Yeah.
We could go down a rabbit hole of this conversation, but we'll resist that for now.
Let's move into the reality check. The reality very check. Nice next day with Sun conjunct Saturn.
And now it's time to face reality. Yeah. But
because it's Aquarius, it's sort of like the reality of what is the way that you want to bring this connection into the future. It's it's that inventive view. It's the looking at something with a clear-eyed view. It's not getting stuck and bogged down. It's more like, what do I need to take responsibility for? So it's got that seriousness to it, but to innovate, to make something new, to accept that life is changing and we need to embrace the future.
Yeah, facing reality. There's a lot about facing reality and being responsible for yourself and your life. And then the next day we come into Mercury sextile Jupiter, which really just opens up the conversation. I think, it's like, okay, we've kind of faced this love fest, we faced this reality check, and now let's have some conversations and bring that into a place of expanding our belief system, or an opportunity to really grow in our ability to communicate what we know.
Sort of like a reward. That's what I was thinking. Just like this reward, the work you've done with Mercury retrograde and so on and so forth. And you get this reward of like this expanded mindset.
I love this month.
Yeah.
I love this month. I think it's really great. It's got that little challenging piece in the middle. There's some challenging pieces, but ultimately we end the season with that Venus still in Pisces. What do we have? There was one other.
I'm not sure. I was just going to say that overall, I feel like this is the energy really picking up this month. Your ideas taking root, like things really moving forwards, and that it's not just a scattered wind though. It's like, I think of it as wind picking up, but it's in a direction. It's more like the jet stream where it's got a focus and it's moving things forwards. And because it's air, it's with fewer of the entanglements of the emotional issues.
Right.
You know, you don't really have to do too much of that till you get to that last quarter moon.
Right.
So that's kind of just the overall
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
that I have about this Aquarius season.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And over the next couple of months, it's going to be really interesting to see how things continue playing out. But I think that kind of finalizes us here. And then we are going to move into the individual impact statements. And so that's what's next. Okay, here we are with our individual impacts. Now, for those of you with Aries rising, this new moon and the Aquarius season really highlights that 11th house.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to suggest to you, Jennie?
Well, let's just cut right to the chase. What we're showing here is those social houses. You can see Aquarius in the 11th house of community, of groups. So there's something about your ability to innovate that impacts your community, or that your community is doing something new and it impacts you. You know, so something about that. And we have also popped Mars into this chart too, which is also a social house of communication.
Right.
What about you? What do you think about that Aquarius in the 11th?
Well, I think it's really interesting because clearly the focus is there in that 11th house, the area of community, the area where we receive from the larger community, like-minded others. This is not the area of your friends. This is the area of like-minded others that support you to your hopes and dreams, really. So you've been working really hard in this area of your life, those of you with Aries rising, because Saturn has been moving through there for 2.5 years or so. So this is an area where there's been a lot of work and a lot of effort put in. So now is a point in time where you take what you've learned in that area and you plant a seed for growth. And like Jennie was saying, you're really supported here. You're really supported because this is Mars is just out of its retrograde. It's moving forward and it's forming a trine aspect to those planets in Aquarius as it's finally moving forward. So this really brings your day-to-day thought processes to the seed that you want to plant for, you know, developing an innovative connection with community or developing an innovative community. Something along those lines.
Yeah, and this is a really nice trine aspect because Mars, you know, has been retrograde in your 3rd house, Aries rising. So that means you've been rewriting the story about how you communicate. This might be your relationship with your siblings or close friends as well. There's some way that that's being impacted. And now that's all moving forward. So now whatever work you've done is supporting that connection you have with your community. Right. You know, so it could be something that you have an offering to your community, like, hey, I'm a good writer. Let me write the materials for this community project. I mean, it could be something along those lines. But at any rate, there's a really, really nice flow of support here.
Yeah, it could just mean, that you're planting a seed to develop something for your community, and you've really you've learned about your communication styles over this last couple of months, and you're ready to put in the work to
or
do
something
that.
You've learned from your community, or maybe a community member lets you understand how to improve your relationship with your sibling, you know, how to have better communication. I mean, they work in tandem, so they play off of each other because you're one individual, this is your life. And these two areas are connected through you. So
it could be that some sibling is bringing you into a community too. There's that reciprocal relationship between the area of communication, siblings, day-to-day thought processes, and your community, how you receive love from the outer world. That's lovely. I love this season.
This is a good season, you know, and I mean, we see the symbols, but your story is what's relevant here.
Right. Right.
Take on
And
that.
yeah, find the way into that story. It involves work that you've been doing in community and a story you've been rewriting around communication, something in that realm. Okay, so that should do it for those of you with Aries rising. Now we're going to go on to those of you with Taurus rising. Get rid of that line. So this really puts the focus of the planting of the seed at the new moon and for the entire Aquarius season into your 10th house of vocation, career, how you're seen in the outer world, your reputation. That's an area where Saturn's been moving through that area for a couple of years now. You've been working hard. You've been really facing reality and being responsible in this area of your life.
Yeah. And this is your career, your profession, or your social reputation. So how you show up in public.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have a career per se, it doesn't matter. This is where you're showing up. Yeah. And significant lessons over the past couple of years where you're being asked to really grow up. So now you get to plant a seed to innovate, to embrace that and add something new and tweak it so it's ready for production, you know?
Right. And you're really being highly supported or the seed you're planting is being highly supported by how you have over the last few months with Mars retrograde, how you have been rewriting the story of your own value.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a nice connection.
Yeah. This is really nice. It's like, you've rewritten this story. Mars is now going direct. You understand your own worth a lot more than you did back in September or October. You understand your own worth better, and you understand maybe how you use your resources. This could have something to do with money. There might have been some story around your money that has been rewritten over the last few months that is now available. Your understanding of money, resources, and your own value are now available to support the seed of innovation that you're planting in your career, reputation, vocation.
That's it.
Beautiful. That's it in a nutshell.
I was going to say, Mars is, this is, as Laurie's saying, this might be an external process to do with finances, but there's always a corresponding internal process. So that's the story that's being rewritten. But this is really nice because both these areas of life pertain to your livelihood. This is the tangible work you have to do in the world. And for those of you with Taurus rising, this is a lot to do with how you think and how you communicate. It is going to be part of whatever those things are. So this is a really, really nice connection. And absolutely, as you change your mindset about the way that you value yourself, it is absolutely going to have an impact in whatever way you're showing up in public. And they work together, right?
Yeah. And a trine aspect is a gift. It's like, it's just there. You've done the work and now you've got the gift of direct action to support that seed that you're planting. That's beautiful.
And as you've worked more on whatever your public thing is, it feeds back to you and makes you feel more confident. So it's a two-way street, you know? So
absolutely. That's lovely. Okay. So now for those of you with, let's see here, next Gemini rising, this puts the new moon and the Aquarius season in your 9th house. 9th house, I think of the 9th house as our worldview. It encompasses things like our education, our connections with other cultures, religion can be in there. It's what develops our worldview, our growth mindset, really. And you've got a lot of innovative energy in that area, but also Saturn's been in there for about 2.5 years now. So you've been working hard to understand your own view of the world.
Yeah, and Saturn's the great teacher, and here you have it in this 9th house of great learnings and of teachers, So this really is something, some way that you're having a dramatic shift in your fundamental beliefs. And you're just, there's an opening that's been available here. And now with this new moon, you get to plant a seed to really kind of seize control of that and like add more to it, and just, you know, open your mind up a little bit more, introduce some small tweak or adjustment that makes things just have this whole new take. You know, it's
Right.
pretty interesting. You don't need to do a lot.
Right.
Just do a
Right.
little bit.
You just
Mhm.
plant a seed for the innovation of your understanding of the world. And that could mean, you know, it could mean all kinds of like little tweaks or big tweaks.
Yeah.
You know, you can do big ones too.
Yeah.
You can sign up for a course that's going to introduce you to, I don't know, another culture that's going to really expand your understanding of the world. And, you know, to support that, to support the seed that you're planting and the work that you're doing and what you have learned in that area over the last few months, you've been really rewriting the story of who you are, how you show up in the world, how people see you, how you take action. So this is now Mars is moving direct, and it is really ready to support that movement forward.
Yeah, so you've really been working hard to rewrite the story of your identity.
Yeah,
I mean, this
yeah.
is, you've had an opportunity to really look within and then work with, like, what is your identity? How can it shift? How can it
Ah,
turn into something different? How can you release the bonds of whatever the narrative that you had? And that's the
yeah,
work you've been doing. And so that really is dramatically
yeah,
going to
yeah,
support your ability to think critically about the world around you and allow new viewpoints to come in,
yeah,
and be able to and also discard viewpoints that do not serve the greater
right,
good of humanity.
right. Yeah.
So it's a nice system of support.
Yeah, a new understanding of yourself supports an innovative view of the world. It's really as simple as that, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sure is. So
Okay.
good
I
luck with
love that. Enjoy it, Gemini rising. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, so now we're going to move on to those of you with Cancer rising. This puts the new moon and the Aquarius season focus there in the 8th house. The 8th house is a really deep, intense area of our lives. This is an area that really relates to um, how we navigate other people's baggage. So this is really about our own boundaries
that.
and how we work with boundaries in order to navigate other people in our lives. It's a tricky house.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just think, you know, Saturn is interesting because Saturn really is the planet of learning boundaries because it's a planet of structure. And the 8th house has to do with how you know yourself well enough in order to set clear boundaries with other people, you know, where you sort of end and they begin, and you have a clarity around that. And with Saturn here, you've just been asked to take a deep dive and really get clear about that so that you can take responsibility
Right,
for what is your end of things, whatever contracts or
right,
negotiations you're making with other people, but also be able to plainly say, hey, you know, that's actually your end of it. I've agreed to do this. It really, it's something like that. Like there's a thing about maturity and responsibility with Saturn. And so this is an
right.
important
Yeah.
learning for any of you with Cancer rising. This has been a very important time for really like parsing that out and getting some
Right.
clarity around it.
Yeah, Saturn's been moving through that house for 2.5 years or so. So you've
Yeah.
been really on a deep dive of understanding your own ability to navigate yourself in those interactions with others that might not be easy.
Mhm.
So, you know, so after doing all that work for a few years now, Saturn's getting ready. It's going to be out of there soon, within the next few months. And this seed that you're planting really kind of sets in place what you've learned.
Mhm.
So you're planting a seed for the innovative understanding of how to have your boundaries clear.
Mhm.
And what's supporting that, Jennie?
Well, at the same time, we have Mars in Gemini and a really nice trine to all this Aquarius stuff. Mars has been retrograde, so there's been this ability to go within and think deeply about the subconscious patterns that we may not have been aware of before. And now you've had this opportunity to really rewrite the narrative about those things that kind of trip you up, because that 12th
Right.
house
Yeah.
has a thing about hidden enemies and the unconscious patterns that you can't necessarily see. So now is the time to really take action on whatever you've learned, and incorporate that into your overall spirituality. And like, how is that going to support your ability to navigate these other things? All of this is for the common purpose. I mean, Aquarius has that thing about humanitarianism. So, with those of you with Cancer rising, this is happening in a deep part of your chart, in a very intangible place of your chart. But it also has to do with your mind and your thinking, because it's air. So you can have a little bit of separation from the challenges that these two houses present, and using it this way, they really work nicely with each other.
They really do. It's like over the last few months with Mars retrograde, you've really learned stuff about your own patterns of thought, your own internal kind of hidden patterns, that what you've learned is now ready to really support your ability to set boundaries. That's really beautiful. Is that cover it?
I think that's pretty good.
All right, let's move on to those of you with Leo rising. Now, if you've got Leo rising, this new moon, and the Aquarius season, the focus here at this time is on the 7th house of intimate one-on-one equal partnerships. So this would include, spouses, romantic partners. It would also include business partnerships, any one-on-one, really, one-on-one equal partnership can be involved here. So this area of your life has been a challenge for a couple of years now, as Saturn has kind of gone through that area, Saturn being the planet that really teaches us with a kind of authoritative teaching we get in this area. So you want to think about what you've learned in this area and what seed of innovation you want to plant now before Saturn moves on into the next house within the next few months.
Yeah, because this really has been significant lessons around these things. So think back to yourself, Leo rising. Think back, like, what are the things you have learned from these types of connections with other people? Because for you, it's like this Aquarius and also Mars over there in Gemini. These are in your very social areas of your life. This is how you connect in one-on-one places, but this is also your community. So we put Mars on this chart because it trines and therefore supports that Aquarian process. Mars has been retrograde and has just recently come out of that retrograde. So this has been an opportunity for you to really rewrite the story about how you interact with your community, or whatever the thing is, how you work with the support of your community, really. Like, do you receive their support? Have you been kind of closed off to community? Have you found yourself needing to be part of a different community? All of those kinds of questions. And they tie very closely in with these one-on-one partnerships. I mean, it's, the 11th house is instructive about groups and alliances and these bigger picture things, but you've also got to work with those one-on-one connections with people. And that's what this picture is showing you.
Yeah, it really is. You've been working hard to understand yourself in relationship for a few years with Saturn moving through there. And then for the last few months, you've been really rewriting your story about how you function in community, how you function in community. So at this point, you've rewritten that story, and what you now understand about your connection with your community is able to support your partnership.
Yeah.
How you've rewritten that story. That's interesting. I would love to hear from somebody about how this works in their own life.
Yeah, and what seed you want to plant at this time, because you have this opportunity to kind of take on board all those lessons you've gotten, and then, like, use this Aquarius season to add in something new to prepare yourself to be different and innovative, for the future.
In your relationships. Yeah. Plant a seed for a new innovative relationship or a new way of managing a relationship you're in. Bring in some excitement, something out of the box. Plant a seed, have fun with it. I think that covers that. Anything else you want to say? Whoops.
No, I think that's pretty good.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to those of you with, whoops, Virgo rising. So if you have Virgo rising, the new moon and the Aquarius season, this falls in your 6th house of health or day-to-day routines.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Those of you with Virgo rising, all the symbols you see in front of you here are to do with your livelihood. You've got the 6th house of routines, as Laurie, as you're saying. These are all the things that get you to work. I mean, in a lot of ways, it pertains to work, and it also pertains to how you look after yourself so you don't become ill. I mean, that's essentially what you're thinking of here. We've also included Mars in these charts because Mars is in a support role here. Mars is having a nice trine to all that Aquarius stuff. Mars recently was retrograde and has now turned direct. So you've really been able to rewrite the narrative of whatever it is about your profession. Like you had an old story that needed some fresh energy, and you've had the chance to really go in and think about that and reflect and create something new. So there's a really nice playoff here between your professional life and the nuts and bolts, the day-to-day, like how do you get yourself to work? How do you eat? Are you exercising? Are you getting outside on a walk? Those things and how they work together. And I don't know about you, but like some of my best ideas I get when I'm out on a walk, so there's a really easy way to see how these work together. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really great. I think, those of you with Virgo rising, with Saturn having been moving through that 6th house for a couple of years now, you've been really working hard to figure out and understand and, kind of face reality and be accountable to your own day-to-day routines. So you've worked hard in that area. Now's the time to plant a seed for innovating that area of your life now that you have learned a new way of being in your career. With that Mars just coming out of the retrograde, you've learned a lot. You've written a new story. Whether you know it or not, you have written a new story about how to be in your career that is going to support the seed that you're planting in your day-to-day life.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that's worth mentioning here is that Saturn's been in that 6th house for a while for you, and it's going to go into your 7th house not too far in the distant future.
Right.
So the routines and the things that you set here are in a very short order going to have an impact on your relationships. Because that's what this wheel is kind of showing us, the movement from one area of your life to the next, and that's what you're preparing for. So that's good to know as well.
Yeah, when Saturn moves into that 7th house, you're going to really have to face reality about how your routines impact your partnerships. So think about that when you're planting the seed. Think about that. Okay, so with that all being said, let's move on to those of you with Libra rising. This puts the new moon and the Aquarius season's focus in your 5th house. 5th house is really about how we give love to others.
Nice. I like that. Yeah. This is also, you can think about this as like accountability to your creative projects. For those of you with children, there might be some information about your relationship with your children. There's something about that too. So that's what this 5th house is: giving love, creative projects, children. It also often requires us to take a little bit of a risk somehow. So at this new moon, you can think about what seed you want to plant to take a risk. And if you're thinking about creative projects, take it to another level, like something you hadn't ever thought about. It's like this out of the box thinking that pops up, and all of a sudden it's like, what can I do to take that into a new realm?
You want to think about it. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not interrupting.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just, Saturn's been moving through this house for a couple of years now. So you want to really think about how you have developed maturity in this area, whether it be your creativity or raising children, which is serious business. Any of us who've had children know what serious business that is. But as Saturn's moving through there, you've really had to face reality and be accountable around how you give of yourself. So at this point, you're planting a seed to innovate, bring some innovation into how you give of yourself. And the support comes from that Mars, which is newly direct. It's been retrograde. So what have we been doing with while it's been retrograde, Jennie?
Well, I think one way we've liked to talk about is this idea of rewriting a narrative. So we all have these little stories we stick to about ourselves, and it gives you an opportunity to rewrite something, put in something completely new and different. And in the ninth house, this is about your worldview.
Yeah,
Like, how has your
yeah.
worldview changed? Like, what intellectual pursuits have allowed you to open your mind and see something different? So this is like letting foreign cultures influence you. This is
Right,
reading something
right.
totally different that you wouldn't normally read. It's just in the name of opening your mind. So
Yeah.
there's this really nice support of this kind of higher vision coming in to support your creative projects. Or like we said, if
Yeah.
it is a parenting thing, this is what you've learned to re-engage your children, like maybe away from social media or something like that, like
Right,
where
right.
you've found a new way to engage them.
Yeah,
But in any case, there's a really nice support between your worldview and then this idea of what do you want to just unconditionally give your love to, that you want to pour
yeah,
yourself into,
yeah,
that you do for the love of doing it,
yeah,
that is
yeah.
affects everyone else. It has it's like putting something really wonderful into the world.
This Aquarius season, I really love it. I really love seeing this incredible support of Mars now finally going direct and offering what it's learned. And just
Yeah.
with a trine aspect, just offering what it's learned. What have you learned in your higher understanding of the outer world that can now inform your ability to give love? Really,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
And
That's what
it's
it is.
also worth noting too, that Saturn has been in that fifth house. I think you might have said this for a couple of
Yeah,
years. So there may be some challenge here. There may be something that has made you feel blocked, because Saturn can certainly be a block. But as all things in life, it's just something to be learned. There's some
yeah,
way at which, that there's some information in there that is valuable to you, that has allowed you to mature and reach to a higher level of
yeah.
responsibility.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so now we are going to move on to those of you with Scorpio rising, and this puts the focus of the Aquarius season as well as the new moon right there in your fourth house of home and family. So Saturn's been moving through this house for a couple of years now. You've been working hard in some way, facing reality and doing some deep work around home and family. And now at this new moon, you have the opportunity to plant a seed, to innovate in some way in that area of your life.
Nice. Yeah, this is an interesting one actually, because the fourth house, I mean, in a nutshell, you could call it home, but home can be a very internal process about the integration of your own personality, and something like your lineage, like these kind of harder to
Yes.
see things, but it also can refer to your physical home, your physical space,
Yeah.
land that you live on. And so this might be some new way that you need to think about, how are you living? What is your home life like? Is it something that you need to shift and move, or is there something small you can do, like maybe it's a time where you're like, you know what, I'm going to start working from home. I mean, a lot of people have made that transition during these kind of the crazy times.
Right.
But the idea is just that there's some way that you can open up a new space that has to do with your home life and the very roots and foundation of your personality. So
Yeah. Yeah. Or it can, like you mentioned, it can be your lineage. It can be somehow planting a seed to understand something from the past,
yeah.
your
Yeah.
lineage itself,
Hmm.
something involving that deep core of where you come from.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we've also
Meanwhile,
put Mars up on the chart here, because Mars has been retrograde. It's been in Gemini for ages, and it's finally going forwards again. So this is the ability to rewrite some kind of narrative and how you deal with other people's baggage, how you deal with other
right,
people's stuff. Like, this has been
right.
an opportunity to really take a look at that. Like, how do you set boundaries with other people? Like, how do you deal when other people get worked up? And now you have a new understanding of this area, and that's
Right.
providing a
Yeah.
support where
Yeah.
maybe some other hard process somebody else went through is giving you information about how to proceed with your deep question about your lineage, or
Yeah.
moving where you live, like tweaking your home or something that is really going to open up some space.
Yeah. I think of that, like that Mars having been retrograde, really rewriting how you navigate difficult spaces with other people. And now that it's moving forward, you've learned a lot. You have a much better understanding of how to do that, how to navigate difficult space with other people. In a trying aspect, this could really speak to an important thing in your family itself.
Yeah.
You might now understand how to deal with a parent, or or a child if you have children living in your home, or just some way that you have learned how to navigate those boundaries with other people really is supporting you to start a new innovation within your understanding of home or family.
Yeah, and I think,
Hmm.
with Scorpio rising too, like this is some deep work, because these houses pertain, these are sort of like the psychic houses, they pertain to things that are not easy to talk about because there isn't an easy language, and there's also a lot of misunderstandings about these deeper areas of our life. But those of you with Scorpio rising, you've been walking around with
You're
that
right.
Scorpio right there, so like you already have these, I don't know, the propensity for these kind of intense experiences that you may not know exactly how to articulate. At the same time, you've probably learned to articulate them because you
Right.
have air signs on these difficult houses. So
Yeah.
you have this ability to kind of wrap your head around, and your ability to talk about really difficult things that other people might not have a clue how to talk about. So,
Yeah, and
you know,
because Mars rules Scorpio, that Mars moving direct really impacts you even more than most people. It really
that's
impacts you. So this is really profound to think about how you have learned over the last few months since Mars has been retrograde. You've really learned how to navigate those difficult spaces and
yeah.
talk about them. Bring those conversations to your family. They will, it will open up doors, and it will enable that seed
Mhm.
that you plant at this new moon to really have an opportunity for growth. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, you got a lot to offer. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, so let's move on to those of you with Sagittarius rising. This puts the focus of the Aquarius season and this new moon right in your third house. I'm going
Mm.
to let you talk about that for a minute.
Okay, good. So with Aquarius in the third house, it's interesting. This is kind of representing somewhat of an ability to overhaul how you communicate. This is a very
Mm,
social part of you. This might be that you've been talking about something new and different for a while now, because Saturn's
mm,
been moving through that space for a couple of years.
mhm.
So this Aquarius season is just kind of highlighting what are all the new things that you've learned in this period of time, and now you can articulate them in a whole new way. So
Mm.
at this new moon, you really have the ability to plant the seed to start a whole new cycle about how you communicate about something that is perhaps rather future oriented, something that is new to society. That's a new way of thinking about things in society. So there's something cool. So think about that, Sagittarius rising. What's popping up for you that has to do with those issues? Those close
Right.
encounters, I would say, the communication kind.
Yeah. And then with Mars just coming out of its retrograde in the seventh house, that suggests to me that, as we've been talking about it as rewriting a story, you have been rewriting a story of who you are in relationship, what partnership means to you. And there's some way that your new understanding of partnership supports the communication. Hmm.
Yeah, really interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
they really work well together, because this is kind of like you know, in your deep study of communication that you've been on this journey for the last couple of years, how is that playing into your partnership? You know, how is when you're learning this thing, you're talking to, whether it's your business colleague or your person that you're with. I mean, you're one person. This is all happening within your life. So how is what you're learning about communication improving or changing your partnership, and vice versa when you're there and you're having those conversations with, you know, your partner in crime, whatever that is, it's also teaching you how to communicate better.
Right.
So there's this
Yes.
really nice
Yeah.
give and take flow back and forth between these things.
Yeah.
And this is a very social part of your life, no matter what, like how you communicate.
Right. I think that's really sweet, just to think of a partnership and how you kind of rewritten that story of what that partnership means to you. And now, as it's moving forward, really having the opportunity for that partnership to really support what you're learning in terms of your own ability to communicate. You've really
Yeah.
taken on that partnership as a partnership.
Yeah.
A
Yeah, and don't be
communication.
alarmed. You know, if you don't have a partner per se, like, it doesn't matter. It's those close contacts, those one-on-one contacts.
Right.
So it's whatever you're learning. It could be from friendships and other things. Because I know not everybody has a partner, and that's okay.
Yeah. It could be a business partnership, an intimate partnership, a close friend. It even could be your therapist. You know, it's someone that you really interact one-on-one with. So there's that. Okay, so I think we're ready to move forward to those of you with Capricorn rising. This puts the focus of the Aquarius season and the new moon in your second house.
Yeah.
That's a great place for it, huh?
Yeah, it's a good place to have Aquarius in a lot of ways, because it gives you a little bit of separation from your self-worth issues or your struggles about money, you know.
It does.
So that's nice. Yeah, because with Saturn in the second house, it's been there for a couple of years now, so you are getting some interesting lessons about, probably at the face of it, your self-worth. How do you value yourself? How do you allow yourself to love yourself? You know, I mean, there's some real questions about that. Because Saturn's the teacher, and you often have some hard lessons.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry. I just was thinking, it's teaching you some lessons of how to love yourself, even if your bank account is very low. You know, that connection between self-worth and money is really important with Saturn moving through the second house. You know, what does money and resources mean to you? What does it mean about your self-worth? So as Saturn's been moving through there for a couple of years, you've really been learning a lot about that. And at this point is a time to plant that seed and really put some focus on that area. Plant a seed of innovative ways of increasing your self-worth, innovative ways of increasing your bank account, whatever it might be. And then where are we getting the support from?
Well, we've put Mars on these charts as well, because Mars is trining this Aquarius. This Mars is in Gemini. It's being retrograde. It's finally out of retrograde. So you've had an opportunity to rewrite the story of your day-to-day routines, you know, the things that you do to keep your health intact, you know, how you eat, how you sleep, you know, do you meditate, bringing up those things into the forefront. And it supports very much your self-worth. I mean, especially I think about things like a meditation practice, especially with air signs that we're talking about here, Gemini in the sixth house. It's just helping your mindset be more even keeled, to really kind of just get some space from anything that is not serving you. So there's a little bit of a theme around that. I mean, they work really nicely together. As you know, maybe you're having a low self-esteem day, you just make sure you get to the gym or you go out for your walk in the woods, and it boosts your self-esteem and helps you find equal footing. So or even footing, I should say.
And if you're struggling with your finances, you put some work into your everyday and you can increase that. You know, how these work together is really interesting. You think about, you've really, while Mars is retrograde, rewritten that story about how you function day to day. And now that it's moving forward, you use that new understanding to really support your self-worth. Bottom line. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a nice thing. So
I love this month. I think it's just wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to move on to those of you with Aquarius rising. This Aquarius season and the new moon is very, very personal, isn't it, Jennie?
yes, this is all about the self. That first house is about, self and self-development and self-image. And so the key word here is self-awareness. So you have a really wonderful opportunity to plant the seed for a new self-awareness, like looking at yourself through new eyes. What have you learned? I mean, with Saturn in the first house, you have been really undergoing some serious reconstruction, right? Or
for a few years.
yeah, like it's been working on you. So what have you learned?
Mhm.
What have you learned about how you show up in the world, how you present yourself? Those are going to be the topics
Right.
that you're, and with the new moon there, you just get to plant a seed for kind of how you take advantage of those lessons that you've been learning.
Yeah, and I love the idea of just simple tweaks. If you think about a new moon in the first house in Aquarius, maybe it's time to show up in a different way. Maybe you need, I don't know, a new haircut or, something to represent this new take on yourself, some visual clue. I would really encourage you to think about that. Look in the mirror. What can you change that will represent a new expression of yourself? And with that new moon, that new seed you're planting, and the work you're doing in that house, we want to look at Mars because Mars is in a trine aspect to those planets. Mars has been retrograde and is just now finally moving forward again. So for a few months now, you have been re-exploring and rewriting your own narrative about your creativity, about how you give of yourself. So what have you learned in the last few months? What have you learned about your creativity, how you give of yourself, and how can your new understanding of that support this new view, this new innovative you?
Yes, it's interesting. Is what makes me think of, I don't know about you, Laurie, but how many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm just not very creative. I'm not a creative person," because they've decided that creative means one thing. Like they might even be like drawing on a piece of paper with a pencil, and like that has nothing to do with. I mean, everybody's a creative being. We're all here to express ourselves and create something. So those of you with this Mars, with Aquarius rising and Mars in your fifth house, you've just had this really nice opportunity to reflect on that, and you get to take action on it. So it's in some way that you are taking action on this creative being that you are, and how that affects how you show up in the world. I mean, it's just a really nice connection. I mean, the first and the fifth house, they're just both about expression, like who you are, on a fundamental level, like the light that you bring to everything that you do is kind of what these two houses show you. And they work really well together because maybe part of reconfiguring your identity or planting a seed for something new in your identity has to do with a creative project that you're working on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's lovely. That's really lovely. I think of, when I was talking about something tangible to represent the change in your looks, and then you think of that creativity, how we present ourselves is a creative expression. So think about that when you look in the mirror and say, how do I want to represent myself? What is the creative representation you can bring? If it was the 1980s, which clearly it's not, I'm going to say something really silly here, but if it was the 1980s, you'd spike your hair and dye it purple. That would be it. So yes, and luckily it's not the 80s. So now we are going to look at how this is going to play out for those of you with Pisces rising. And this puts the focus of the Aquarius season and the new moon in your 12th house. What are you going to say about that, Jennie? I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Well, this is interesting because, you know, Pisces rising is somewhat of a mysterious vibe that you give off. People maybe don't quite know how to read you, depending on other things you have going on. But here you have a real focus on the 12th house, which kind of ties in with those hidden things tucked away behind the scenes that not everybody can see. You know, so you've had a real lesson, Pisces rising, for the last couple years while Saturn has been in Aquarius, about those kind of subconscious patterns, or something that's hidden, or some way that you've had to deal with suffering in a new way, and kind of recognize that suffering is a universal experience, even though your personal suffering can feel like can take over everything else at times. There's something about those topics, and you have a real opportunity to plant a seed for a new and innovative way of looking at all of that.
Yeah, and understanding your own internal patterns.
Yeah, like understanding the things that trip you up, or the tendencies, you know, that you have. And I think with Pisces rising in Aquarius in the 12th house, there could be an element of like the sacrificial here. Like, is there a way that there is too much sacrifice happening? Or is, you know, there's a tendency for that. And there's a time and a place, right? So it's something about those sorts of topics.
And it's fascinating when you put Mars in here in a trine aspect to those planets. And you think about Mars has been retrograde for quite a while now, a couple of months, and now it's finally moving forward. So what have you learned? What have you learned in terms of rewriting the story of your family, your home and family, and how is that opening up this understanding and this new seed of innovation in your own internal patterns? There's some interesting family, you know, our internal processes, these patterns, these internal hidden patterns generally come from our family. So what have you learned over this past few months that is now kind of like, oh, I now understand some of what has been hidden behind the scenes? There's a aha here that I think is really significant.
Yeah, because a fourth house is such a private house. You know, it's all the things behind the closed doors, like your home life, but also your lineage, the things that you came into this life with that you didn't even know, like genetic and family stories and so on. And during this time period of Mars being that fourth house, you've really had an opportunity to rewrite the story about who you are as a family person. What's your role in the family? Like, have you been able to kind of recognize that and make a shift to it? Because now I think at this Aquarius season, you have a profound opportunity to plant a seed to make a big shift. And it works really well with that Mars in the fourth house. You know, so I mean, one question that came to my mind was, is there a way in which perhaps you've sacrificed a bit too much in your family life that you want to shift? You know, and I mean, that might not be the case for you, but it's just one question. And how do these things work together? Or how does some kind of action that you're going to take in your family life allow you to alter your view of spirituality and how you look at the oneness of all things, like these big topics? But there's certainly an interplay between these kind of two less than tangible areas of your life.
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating one. That brings up all kinds of interesting ideas to me of, what you've learned about your family that, you know, you've had to maintain some objectivity with that being in Aquarius. And now you can move forward. Maybe there's tales to be told.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's fascinating. Okay, so I think that wraps up our exploration of the individual impacts of this season and this new moon. And anything else you want to say as we say goodbye, Jennie?
No, I think I hope that this Aquarius season brings some new life, a breath of fresh air to your life. So there you go.
Absolutely.
Spun it out.
All right. Thank you, Jennie. And thank you for all of you who are listening. Have a great Aquarius season. It's going to be a good one.
Thank you, Laurie.